Hello again, everyone. What a beautiful thing to have Andy Shepherd read Psalm 23. The harmony. It's amazing, your namesake, and you're down to read on this one. I think it's beautiful. New year, new term started. How are we all feeling? Oh, Jordan's there. Carry us all, mate. Well, as Jamie said, we're beginning a new teaching series just for this first half of term, really. But it's one that I think, actually, as I thought about it even this morning, began last week with Emma's New Year message. So if you were here for that, I hope you have pondered on those things and it's been dwelling in you this week. But actually, it was a kind of like a great intro to the Psalm 23, that we're going to be exploring together. And the prayer behind this teaching series really is about wanting something, recognizing in the life of a church and in the rhythms of life and in the rhythm of a year, we are experiencing, and people in our midst have experienced and will experience weariness. Our hearts will become weary. Our souls will become tired. Maybe they've been struggling for a while. Maybe there's been loss in your life. Maybe there's been grief. Maybe there's been concerns and strife that have just crowded in. Maybe the storms of life have battered and bruised you. Maybe there's been relational issues that you're feeling lost at this moment at the beginning of a new year. Maybe there's things ahead that you think, I know that's coming. Maybe you're feeling adrift. My prayer, our prayer, as we've dwelt in Psalm 23 and as we thought about it, even about 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 10 weeks ago, would be that Psalm 23 would be a balm to our souls at the beginning of this year. Now, I wanted a live lamb, but the best I've got is my wax jacket. And I'm not going to put it on because it's too warm. But I wanted to inhabit the role of the shepherd. And I haven't got a crook, but I know someone who has, and we're going to watch a video from her. Joanna, who is often seen singing at the front, leading our worship band, is a shepherd. And here she is on video.
Okay, so it's time to go on this field here. It's a 10-acre bank field, and blow me if I'm running over to that far corner. Are you panning over to that corner? To go and get the ewes. If I come a bit closer, you might not be able to hear me. So we've got Bryn here. Come, Bryn. Good boy. And he knows the score. He's ready for action. I'm in my sheep gear, and so he knows we've got work to do. I've got my bucket, and it's time to bring the ewes in. I've only got a few ewes in this mob. They're in lamb. And we're a team, Bryn and I, so they also know my voice, they recognise me, so let's get them in. Right, go on and get the feet. Good boy. Good lad. Come down, come on down. You going to zoom in?
Yeah.
Good lad. My sheep! And here they come. So Bryn's gone round, he always works counter to me, so he'll always go behind the flock and bring them to me. You can see him on the top of the field there. Good lad! Marking his territory, obviously. And here come the girls. We've got all 10, I think. Good girls, good girls. Good girls, come on in. Dog, he's waiting for more instructions. Sometimes if I don't think I've got all the flock, I can say any more to Bryn and he'll disappear off around the edge of the field and go and look for any that might be in trouble. And once, sure enough, Bryn stood on the brow of the hill and looked at me and I thought, oh, I'll just go and see if that means something. And I followed him, and I had a sheep stuck down the bottom on the fence. Good lad, come on. There we are. Now happy? Yeah, they always, sheep aren't as stupid as people make out. They know what territories are theirs and where we walk, which fields I put them in. They get to know all that. They certainly know me. They certainly know my voice. This is Joy. Hello, darling. Hello. And they'd never do this to a stranger. They'll definitely know my voice over other people's as well. And yes, a sheep on its own, that always rings alarm bells. If a sheep's on its own, it's poorly or suffering in some way, because obviously they are flock animals, and that's how they keep safe. So that's something that I often reflect on. You're sort of in danger if you're on your own, certainly if you're a sheep, and more vulnerable to, certainly if they're in the wild, they'll be way more vulnerable.
It does go on, but I think we'll stop it there. Just a little insight to set the scene for Psalm 23 of Joanna's life. And did you notice how slow it was? No, I don't mean her video and what she was saying, but just actually the life, the pace of what she's dealing with and who she's dealing with and what they have to do. It's slower, isn't it? Over the next few weeks, we're going to be breaking down Psalm 23, looking at it in 3 chunks, and the 3 chunks are up on the screen. So week 1, we're going to be looking at the sheep and the shepherd. The sheep and the shepherd, that's today. Week 2, if we go on, the companion and the traveller. And this tracks throughout the psalm what we hear, and as Andy read it, what we hear and what we read, the companion and the traveller. Even though I walked through the valley, the companion and the traveller. And the last week, we'll be looking at the host and the guest. And in between those second and third, there'll be a youth takeover. They're going to be coming and taking the service and giving us the youth thoughts on Psalm 23. And to finish off the series as week kind of 5, what I'd love to invite you into is a morning of devotion and ministry. Because I really believe that there's going to be things that crop up for us as a church and for you as an individual throughout this series that I really want us to pray into and prayerfully minister to one another and ask for the Spirit to come and minister to us. So that's week 5. You know what? That can happen any week. We pray every week, but week 5, I just want to give you the heads up. Charles Spurgeon, the great Victorian Baptist preacher, said that this is the pearl of the Psalms. I want us to glean and pick the fruits of this psalm as much as we can in this first few weeks of another year. We don't know what's ahead. There's uncertainty, isn't there? There's highs, there's lows, there's losses, there's goodbyes for some. So I want myself to have our hearts set on the one who will be sufficient for us, who will lead us, who will carry us if necessary, who will bring refreshment and guide us to safety, just like the sheep did as Joanna called them over. If we only would listen, trust, and obey the voice of the one who speaks. So, the Lord is my shepherd. Let's say it together. The Lord is my shepherd. It's said that these 5 opening words of the psalm are so often overlooked as we rush past them to delve into the sublime good news of green pastures. He leads me into green pastures and beside cool, refreshing waters. But if we do that, if we rush past them, we miss the beauty and the implication of this simple opening. The Lord is my shepherd. As David writes this psalm, we don't know exactly what was going on for him, but it's likely that he was probably experiencing some trouble, maybe. But it's contested. But he's pulling and drawing down on what he already knows of God, about God as creator. He knows about God as the covenant Lord, the Lord. The covenant Lord of Abraham, Isaac, of Jacob, his forefathers, his ancestors. He knows that the name Lord is the name of Yahweh, the covenant name by which God has revealed himself to Moses and to others, as we read in our Old Testament and in the early books of the Bible. I am that I am, Yahweh says to Moses. I am the transcendent Lord who will not be reduced to the status of a local king, a tribal king in a group in a corner of the world. I will not be reduced. This is the one who spoke and worlds leapt into being. This is the one who is the creator. This is the one whose hand governs the farthest reaches of interstellar space. He's the one who so sovereignly controls each pulsating microorganism, 1 billion of them in a handful of dirt that we pick up, so that not one of them falls to death without his sovereign sanction and knowledge. He is the Lord. This is the Lord that David writes when he writes, the Lord. And yet, he says, this Lord is my shepherd. The Psalms are peppered throughout with imagery of God as king, as judge, as father, as creator, and as rock. Maybe you know these Psalms for yourself. All different facets of saying something of God's character, and each metaphor reveals something true about what God is like. But here, in this psalm, David reaches for the most comprehensive and intimate metaphor for God that he can think of. Having spent time as a shepherd, he knows what it is for the shepherd who lives with his flock, who smells of them, and who is everything to them. Their guide, their veterinarian, their protector. The Lord is my shepherd, he says. And of course, it's one thing to have a shepherd, isn't it? It's wonderful. Those sheep are looked after by Joanna. It's good to have a shepherd that looks after you, that guides you, that takes you to green pastures and safe havens. But everyone has shepherds. Did you know this? You've got shepherds in your life. We're all followers of one thing or another. We're all swept along by experiences or ideas or circumstances. But it's an entirely different thing and an astonishing thing to have a shepherd, to have as a shepherd the one who is life and strength itself, who never tires, who never gives up, who never slumbers nor sleeps as he watches over you, and a shepherd who does not need protection like you need protection. And not only is the Lord, God, creator, portrayed as this shepherd, but in this psalm, David is portraying himself in the neediness of a sheep. I need, he says, food, rest, water, guidance, shelter, protection, comfort, housing, and helping, please. That's what I need as a sheep. You name it, in all of those categories, David needs it in the psalm. And who will meet these needs? Who's going to meet these needs? Who can? The answer rings out from Psalm 23. David makes it clear for all to hear. The one whom I need, he says, the one whom you need to shepherd you, neither needs you, nor needs to be shepherded by you. And yet, this God, this one who is shepherd, gives himself to you to be your shepherd. That's why David can sing out, the Lord, creator, is my shepherd. Think about that for a moment. The creator God, David can claim, is his personal shepherd. So my first question to us is, friends, do you know this shepherd? We kind of ask it every week anyway, as pastors in the church. That will always be the question, I hope, that is preached from this place and in this church, and ask you in different ways. But do you know the shepherd that David knows? The amazement that comes from knowing that it's the Lord of the universe who offers himself as a shepherd to you. And not only that, but he longs to be your shepherd. Perhaps you know him already. Perhaps you've been walking as David had walked the Psalm 23 life for a long time. Or maybe you've never experienced God as your shepherd who looks for you, searches for you, cares for you, tends to you, and leads you. It's good news, I think, if with David, you too can say, the Lord is my shepherd. He's my shepherd. But just in that opening line, don't forget, we've only got to the opening line yet, folks. David also declares that because of who the shepherd is, he can also say, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I lack nothing, another translation says. I have all I need, another translation says. I will not go without. Even if I wanted to fully provide for my children and my family, or for a group of people that I care for, or even as a pastor and a vicar of a church, my means, my resources will and do run out. Shocker. My resources run out. The staff team, other leaders in the church, life group leaders, youth group leaders, children leaders, we're all finite. So you can't rely on us to meet your every need. I can't rely on my friends in the staff team to meet my need and meet my every need. As much as we might pray, and we do, as much as we might contend for you, and we do, as much as we might work for you, and we do work for your good, as much as we might long for your best, ultimately, we are going to fail to supply your every need. But God is not like us. The self-existing, self-sufficient God is not self-absorbed or self-centered, but he's self-giving. I'll say that again. The self-existing, self-sufficient God is not self-absorbed or self-centered. He's self-giving. Let's look briefly at how he provides and what he provides to our needs in verses 2 and 3. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. This is the bit that everyone loves, right? Oh, he leads me by. I just want to be in a field by the babbling brook and have my soul restored. Thank you. And if we understand the logic of the original language, it helps us really grasp the depth of security that comes from having a God-centered life. David has said, because the Lord is my shepherd, I have everything I need. If I have him, I've everything in life. And it's been said that verses 2 to 6 is really just an expansion on verse 1. We've done it in verse 1, guys. We don't need the rest of the series. We've done it. Verse 1, just dwell there. Verse 1 is so dense and so rich. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The beauty of the Lord is my shepherd. What more do I need in life? But it just gets expanded on in verses 2 to 6. And I think the reason it does that is because it's a song. It's a psalm. It's supposed to be declared. It's supposed to be dwelt in as a poem. And you know what they do? And we talked about this in a series when we talked about the Song of Songs. Poems and songs and art does something to make us feel. That's why we love Psalm 23. because it makes us feel something. So we're going to try and help us throughout the rest of this time and in the rest of the series to feel Psalm 23. What difference does God make in my life? A life restored and rested in him. Well, gives us the answer. The shepherd provides food, green pastures, drink for the thirsty and the parched, still waters. And the fact that he makes me lie down means there's enough in that place to stay and to settle and to be at peace. I don't have to strive and wrestle and move on to the next pasture, the next scrap of grass, the tireless search for another nourishing bit of food. I can rest. I can rest completely in the place that the shepherd has led me to. This green, luscious, refreshing place of resting means that ultimately my soul is restored. If we'd had a live lamb or a sheep, which would have been an absolute win for me, it's hard to make a sheep lie down, apparently. I would have checked this with Joanna, but it's hard to make a sheep lie down. If you put, it's hard to make my dog lie down, to be honest, but, you put your hand on his rump, get down. They won't go. They're usually active. They're walking. They're munching. They're busy. They're wandering. But apart from when they're resting, when they feel restful, when they've encountered a place where it's safe, where they have everything they need, where the shepherd is nearby and they're safe and protected. Have you ever stayed in a really fancy hotel? And I mean the kind of hotel where everything is taken care of. No? No, neither have I. Anyway, one day. But the picture's good, right? The picture's great. Arrival drinks in the lounge. Welcome, Mr. Ellin. Check in? Yeah, easy. No problem. Absolutely no problem. We'll sort that out. Known by your name. Mr. Ellin, lovely to see you again. Again. How can we help you today? Bags, don't worry about them. They're already being carried up to your room and they'll be sorted out. Food, whatever you want. Whatever you want to order, it's yours. We'll sort it whenever you want it, day or night. New towels? Oh, of course, we'll have them sent up straight away. Bed made fresh every day. No matter how big or small, just pick up the phone. Nothing is too much trouble for you, sir. True rest, provision, restoration comes from being, I think, in God's creation. Where do you like to holiday? Mountains? Seaside? Where are you restored? So much of our life is spent behind screens in artificial environments with artificial lighting. And Harold Kushner, a Jewish rabbi, argues that the reason why we might find Psalm 23 so entrancing or in capturing, or whatever the word is, captivating, is because in our world of electricity, we rule the night as we rule the day. We dispel darkness at the flick of a switch, so we feel masters of our own world. But in doing so, suddenly we're alienated from the natural world with rhythms that put there for our good. Detached from it, and we risk spending more time under artificial bright lights than under the blue skies that God has created. And in the green grass with our toes and our fingers running through the grass in God's world. God alone holds the mastery over day and night and does not grow weary. Perhaps that's why Psalm 23 is an invite to rest and to be taken care of and to be known and to have our needs attended to by the good shepherd. And perhaps that's why it's such a profoundly lasting and impactful word to us. If we can say, because the Lord is mine, like David does, I lack for nothing, and I have his provision, physically, spiritually, emotionally, financially maybe, was prayed this morning, and pray that for somebody here. we can truly say, I'm completely at rest. If all those needs are met, if all my needs are met in how the shepherd provides for me, I can rest. Don't have to keep searching, striving like the wandering sheep, getting stuck in hedges, rescued. One writer says that we need to be careful. This psalm is not working towards the goal of us all getting to a point and saying, I'm going to dwell in that lovely cafe at the end of my walk, at the end of the day. I'm just going to dwell in that cafe and have a nice cappuccino and a bit of cake. It's not saying that. That's not the promise. It's not sponsored by a local rambling or a walking group. The psalm as a whole is loaded as a picture intended to draw the hearer, the reader, you and me, to the pictures of shepherding that the Bible have already given. Vividly seen in the story of God's people and the Exodus from Egypt. When the Hebrew people travel in the wilderness, they're not in a cafe. They're in the wilderness. This is the picture that David's drawing to mind as he writes his psalm. But they know God's provision in the wilderness. They know his protection in the wilderness, just like the shepherd. This probably isn't obvious to us, though. David uses the same language. In Deuteronomy 2, it says, these 40 years the Lord your God has been with you. You have lacked nothing, it says. That's what David's drawing on. When God spilled water out of a rock and provided food from the heavens in manna, this is what David's drawing on. David uses the words and the pictures of the Exodus story to describe what his shepherd provides for him hundreds of years later. He uses the language of Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, pointing to a promised land of rest flowing with milk and honey. To restore that which was lost when Adam and Eve were cast out of the Garden of Eden. And so, the blessings of knowing him as shepherd here and now for David are rooted and experience the reliance, the trust, the obedience that comes from knowing the shepherd of old. How much more true is that for us as we look back? David looked back on his history, on his family history. We look back to David and our family history beyond him to know the goodness and the faithfulness of God as shepherd. We look back to him who experienced, to David, who experienced this goodness and faithfulness, the same God. And so we can stand in the same faith as David and declare he did it then and he can do it again. He did it then and he can do it again for me. He'd done it for them. He can do it for me. He can do it for us. The shepherd is faithful and good, so I can listen and obey his voice because he's good. I've seen it. I've seen where he's led people before. I've seen how it's worked out, and I'm going to trust and obey the same voice and the same shepherd. The last bit of the bit that we're going to look at today, the last bit of scripture that is verses 3 again. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. He guides me along the right paths, the paths of righteousness in another translation. Friends, we are never standing still in the Christian life. You're either going with the shepherd or you're choosing your own path. We're never standing still. So it's a choice. In John 10, Jesus says, I am the good shepherd, echoing that voice of old, I am who I am. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Jesus declares to the people listening that the picture throughout the scriptures of God as shepherd can now be known in full reality in front of their eyes. In him. He is the shepherd who David sang about in his psalm. He is the one in whom we find our green pasture. By coming to him in our ordinary day-to-day, day-in, day-out, everyday life, walking with him, being led by him. If the shepherd guides us on paths of righteousness, the question then is, are we on the Jesus path? Or am I leading myself or being led down by other shepherds a different path? One pastor put it like this: our generation is so confused as to the nature of true freedom. We think it's found in forging our own path, being true to ourselves, living the best version of myself, and we inevitably fall back into the enslavement to another way, another rhythm, another practice, another person, another way. True freedom, he says, is complicated. True freedom is found along someone else's path, not my own. That's true freedom. And Emma touched on this last week. So I'd encourage you to go back and listen to that sermon as well. If we're going down somebody else's path where we're led along by them, we're buffeted and blown around by all sorts of different choices. But if we're following the Jesus path and walking with him and being led by him, not being pushed, not being kind of driven down them, as you see down country lanes, kind of like the sheep being driven down the lane. No. What's the invite? The invite is to listen to the voice and follow. Where we're led. He's gone ahead. He knows the way. He's the shepherd. I'll follow. I trust him. The good shepherd is ahead of us. And we follow him, we hear his voice, and because we know his voice, we're eager to follow it. See how eager those sheep were? Okay, yeah, the bucket helped. But hey, the bucket helps, right? The bucket helps for us too. We hear his voice and we follow him. Psalm 23 teaches us that the place of rest to which he leads isn't necessarily the cafe with cake, as lovely as that is, but it's a place of greenest grass, coolest waters, and deepest restorations. Why? Because it's where the shepherd is. That's where the shepherd is. He's gone ahead. He's leading us there. It's only in Christ that we can say, I shall not want. As much as other shepherds may contend otherwise, they will do nothing more than rob us of the life we desire. Our goal as Christians should be to find ourselves so full of Christ that we too can say, I lack nothing. And that starts with making sure we're listening to and following the right shepherd. So as I close, folks, I want to pose some questions to us as a church. Always questions coming from the front, aren't there? That's why we're having that ministry time and devotional time. You might be asking, is it worth it? Is he worth it? The valley is dark and gloomy and scary. Is he worth it? Can I trust him? Is this shepherd trustworthy and true? I want to encourage those of you who are thinking that. Keep exploring. Come to Alpha. Keep journeying in your life groups. Keep asking those questions of your trusted friends. Keep praying with those friends. Hear their testimony. Hear how they can point back to the God who is faithful and true and good. Maybe, though, you're asking, can I depend on him? That's a slightly different question, isn't it? Can I depend on him? Is his voice valid? Can I trust in his voice and rely on him? And I want to say a wholehearted yes to you. Being in a community of believers is the best place to keep pushing on into those realities. Depending. Trust. But maybe you've either wandered from the shepherd's presence or from the path he set you on. Maybe there's a relationship, maybe there's a situation that has opened up distance between where you are and the path of righteousness that Jesus is wanting to lead you on. Come back. Come back. Hear his gentle voice to the weary and the burdened, the lonely and the lost, the least and the last. Hear his voice. Come to him, all who are thirsty. He will give you rest. perhaps unbeknownst to anyone else here, you are thinking of leaving the shepherd's side. I want to say to you and challenge you that there is no greener grass, no better pasture, no more life-giving words than can be found on Jesus' lips to you. Take time to consider the path that you're on. Is it following the shepherd? It won't always be easy, but he knows the best way, and he promises good to you.